Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be giving you guys 2 plyometric movements that you can do to get faster in all parts of your race. Now the first one is broad jumps. Broad jumps specifically focus on the acceleration portion of the race, and you can play around with these in different ways. The first way being focusing on pretty much a broad jump replicating a block start, which is where you just do one broad jump, go back, one broad jump, go back, one broad jump. Is as simple as that. That's the focus of the broad jump, specifically on the start. But something you'll notice if you try this is the more broad jumps you do consecutively, the quicker off the ground you're going to be getting. Why? That's because your body is already accelerating and then you're applying more force, which, in case you haven't noticed, is very similar to how you'd be sprinting. The only difference is when you sprint, you're using one leg at a time. Once you get out of the blocks, instead of both legs, which the broad jump does. But regardless, it still is a strong benefit towards your race if you have poor acceleration, if you do broad jumps again and again and again. If you struggle out of the blocks, but you find that after that you're pretty much fine, maybe doing one broad jump and resetting would be good for you. If you struggle just in early acceleration in general, then most likely repeat broad jumps would be good for you, where you just focus on getting off the ground as quick as possible. So if you're doing one broad jump, the focus would be on trying to get as far as you possibly can from the first step. That is the main goal. Whilst if you're doing multiple repeat broad jumps, the goal is to get maybe 80 to 90% of what your maximum would be, but also trying to get off the ground quicker and quicker as the steps go by. If you was able to do this for about 12 weeks, you could expect to see big jumps in your acceleration mechanics, acceleration speed, because of how focused these are on your power capabilities. Now next would be for top speed. If you struggle in top speed, there is one plyometric exercise that everyone would recommend to you, which is bounding. Bounding can be done in various different ways. There's power bounds, speed bounds, and one-legged bounds. I'm going to go from the slowest to the fastest. So the slowest would be single leg bounds, where you go on one leg naturally. The ground contact time is quite high compared to the rest, purely because you don't really get much support from the rest of your body on making the movement, which makes it very powerful, which is great if you're trying to teach your body how to be stronger, but it's not so much great if you're trying to teach yourself how to get faster. It has its places in training because it is still powerful, but it's a much slower contraction. And what we want to focus on for top speed is ground contact times being as low as possible. That means you get off the ground as quick as possible. That should be the main focus. Next would be power bounds. Power bounds are a bit faster than single leg bounds, which makes them really good for leg acceleration into top speed. So leg acceleration and transition, but not so much good for top speed specifically because, again, the contractions are quite slow. If you do more reps in a single set, so you're doing maybe 10, 20, you could expect to see more closer similarities to top speed, but you can go faster, which is with speed bounds. Now, the difference between power bounds and speed bounds is your arms. With power bounds, both of your arms go up, just like how you would in a broad jump, whilst in speed bounds, your arm mechanics are just the exact same as they would be with sprinting, except you pause because you're in the air for a long time, which is great because it can teach you how to sprint better. You can work on your mechanics comfortably because you're in the air, so you have more time to focus on moving your hips, moving your glutes. Wherever you're not so good at moving, you can focus on moving them there, and the contractions really quick. You get off the ground with ground contact times quite similar to what you'd be getting if you was just a sprint. The only difference is you're just in the air for a sustained period of time. My recommendation for an athlete trying to do this would be not to do them all at once, but a progression. Pick 2 at a time and work them in over a period of at least 6 weeks, preferably 12 weeks, doing no more than 120 touches, which is every single time your foot gets on the ground. So if it's a broad jump, every single step is still one touch. If it's a bound, every single step is still one touch. Do them 3 times a week. Make sure they're spaced out every other day. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, for example, because if you do them too close, you're going to get injured. These 120 touches can be done each session, but they're not a goal you should be aiming for. With plyometrics, less can mean more. So if you find that doing too much is taxing your body on the day too much, you can do that. For example, my plyometric sessions usually are about 30 to 60 touches instead of the max, which would be 120, which is recommended usually. Because of the broad jumps, you have two choices, which is the single broad jump and the multiple broad jump. You can have those as one session where you could pick one or the other, or have them as separate sessions. But you're going to have to balance yourself whether you want to focus on more broad jump or bounds within a week. Multiple different combinations you could have. You could have a week. You could have 12 weeks of just broad jumps. You can have 12 weeks of just bounds, or you can have 12 weeks where you're heavier on the broad jumps or heavier on the bounds, or you split it down into 2 6-week blocks where you're heavier on the broad jumps for one side of those 6 weeks and heavy on the bounds for the other side. You have to play around with it. It all depends on you. What are you good at? What are you bad at? So you can focus on that, so you can make sure that your season is the best that it can possibly be. Okay, as promised, I'm going to be answering the questions you guys have that you gave to me in my community tab from a bunch of my different community posts. Check those out. That's how you can get featured in one of these videos for your questions, and it's going to be answered. I'm going to start off with Christabel, who says, how to set achievable goals to get faster based off on performance and what to do to reach them. First, let's start off with achievable goals. There is no such thing as an unachievable goal, only an unachievable time frame. If you want to improve your 60 by a second, you're not going to be able to do it in a day, week, or a month, but maybe 4 months or a year or 2 would allow you to do it. Though it does depend on what your 60-meter time is, because the closer you get to the world record, the closer you get to being at the best. And in my case, I'm not close to the world record, but if I want to remove a second from a 60, for example, I would be more than 0.15 faster than anyone to ever done it. And I don't mean the actual world record time, but I just mean general just fast times, whether it's a 60-meter split or what. So you need to get the time frame down first. So I'll give you guys an example. Let's say I'm running 7:16. It's September. It's not, but let's say it is. And I want to improve my 60-meter time by 0.2. I've figured that I want to get to 0.2 by December. So that's the time frame I give myself, 4 months. And I think I can realistically remove 0.2 within that time. So let's get that. 696. That's what the aim is. Now, we need to figure out what we're going to do to get there. We've got the goal. Great. We need to know how to get there, which is every single week, every single month, and just the entire block in general, what we need to be doing. So there's 3 things that we need to be focusing on: sprinting, plyometrics, and gym training. Let's start with the gym. In the gym, we're going to be focusing on power movements. So this is compound movements, but moving really quick, and Olympic movements, just getting as heavy as you can with the weight. Not so much strength stuff, pure power. So the weight needs to be moving quick. It doesn't have to specifically be heavy, but it has to be moving quick. Next, the plyometrics. 60 is not a very long race. 60 meters is mostly just acceleration. There's not much top speed components. So the focus would basically be more on broad jump activities or slow ground contact stuff compared to bounds, where it's more quicker ground contact. Not to say there wouldn't be need in the training plan for that, but just an example, you'd probably be focusing on more broad jump stuff than you would be on bounds, maybe some drop jumps. It really just depends on what actually you need specifically. Next would be sprinting. So for sprinting, there's 2 things to focus on: the sessions and your technique. The sessions, that's very simple. Generally, you don't want to be sprinting more than 60 meters to actually be working on your acceleration, because by 60 meters, most likely you already hit your top speed. And that's kind of an exaggeration. There would be times where you need to get to 60, but most of the time, you're probably going to be sprinting about 20, 30, maybe 40 meters. And the different types of sessions that you'd be doing would be resisted or unresisted, but max velocity, which means you're going at 100%. A few different ways to do this would be to sprint by yourself with weight, whether that's with a sled or, in my case, an exogeny, or maybe you want to go and run against someone fast and you can try and catch them, or have someone slower than you run in front of you, or just run in a group. The majority of your sessions want to be quick and snappy because of how short the distances are. So I'll give you a good trial session. 3 times 3 times 30 unresisted. That would be a decent training session to have. Wouldn't be the best because it depends on you. So once you figured out which part of the 60 you're deficient in, that's what you're going to be focusing on in your training sessions. If you're more deficient in late acceleration, then most likely you spend most of your time doing distances longer than 30 meters, but no more than 60. Whilst if you're more deficient at the start, you're going to be doing distances 30 to 20 or maybe even 10 most of the time. Along with that, you also want to be doing a lot of block starts, because the block start does determine how a lot of the race is going to end. If you have a bad block start, you can play catch up all you want, but the chance of you catching whoever's leading is low. Trust me, I know from experience. And along with that, you just want to be focusing on your technique. You want to make sure your technique is as good as it can possibly be. The better your technique can be, the better you're going to be able to get to your goals. And you want to be having mini goals all along the way onto your road to there. So that's goals in the gym. Maybe you want to be hitting certain numbers with the plyometrics, reaching certain distances, with the sprints, getting to certain times. And with the sprints for certain times, you want to break it down into splits. 10-meter split intervals is too tiny and it's quite hard to quantify. So you should be focusing on 20 to 30 meter splits, which would mean you should be getting splits that you would need to run 6:96 for 20, 30, 40, and 60 meters. Once you have those, you would know what times roughly you're going to be needing to be hitting in training to actually be able to run the times you want. So by the time you get to competition, you're not so panicked. You know, when I go on the track, I'm either going to hit it or I'm going to miss it, but probably by this amount. And you'll probably be shocked because whenever you go and compete, you'll always notice something, which is you always perform better, maybe just slightly better than what you would normally be doing in training, as long as you're fully recovered. But once you've got those splits, you want to be attacking those every single time you go to train. You want to be trying to achieve and surpass those, because you know, if you surpass those, you're going to be PBing, and it's going to be a PB bigger than the goal you had out for yourself.